again in Rensick talk show. Yet another amazing conversation I'm having with a veteran expert. As you know, guys, that matric result has been published on last week, Thursday. Most of the kids and their parents definitely would be happy with the results, and some might be depressed and annoyed because they might have failed. Finding out that you have failed may be extremely shocking, where friends move on to the next grade. Feels like so embarrassed. So let's find out what you can do in this situation. Today, I'm taking on board Dr. Ken Resnick, who is an educational psychologist and founder of Smart Choice Parenting Program, established in 2008, assess several learners of varying ages, troubling with low motivation, lack of perseverance, opting out, fear of failures. So let's listen from Dr. Ken Resnick. Okay, so morning, sir. How are you doing? Thanks a lot for joining.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay,
I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure for me also. So you know that matriculants got the result last Thursday, and most of them definitely achieved with flying colors. But some might have failed, and that would be so stressful for the kids and their parents. So my question is, how do you see it, and what do you think would be the reason or negligences that happen to fail, and they come into the situation? What would you say about that?
All right, I think there's two problems, but the one was hidden. That the kids that matriculated this year, excuse me, the number that at school in grade 1 of this year, 1 million of them have dropped out, by the way, which they haven't published, but 1 million dropped out, by the way. Now, you must remember that failing in many ways is a choice, and it doesn't just happen. So there's no doubt that there were issues on their way to matric. You wouldn't have got a kid getting 70, 80% regularly, all of a sudden failing matric. So the moment you've got a kid not doing well at school or failing as they're going along, we need to nip it down there, because invariably there are problems in that child's life, either self-esteem problems, they're disorganized, they might be sitting too much on social media, playing too many games, don't read properly. So they're cramming, they're not engaging with the subject matter. There are a whole lot of variables that we've got to take into account. So for a child that has failed now, obviously it's a big thing, but then I'm sure there were warning signs in the majority of them along the way.
Right.
What was done? So much depends on the school, so much depends on the home, what was going on. And the trend today, excuse this frog in my throat, the trend today with kids, what I found, and it's getting worse starting from the young ones, is that they lack grit. They don't find it easy to stick with something. They don't need to have friends at all. So they're playing far too many these games, on these devices. The girls are spending far too much time on social media, especially the ones that are not well socialized. So their little world is not the real world often. Right. And then they're coming down to earth. They've had COVID to cope with. If they lack self-discipline, who was helping them? How were the parents managing them at home over the last 2 years? In other words, most homes took a lot of strain because parents didn't know what to do. And invariably, as a teenager, if that teenager didn't have a relation with a parent or didn't take responsibility for themselves in terms of putting their nose in their work and actually wanting to work, you would have had nagging parents.
Yes.
And then if they were nagging parents, there would have been fights. There would have been arguments. The kids would have just been spending too much time on games or whatever. And then you got other socioeconomic problems, etc. So we need to pick up these problems early on. I know a lot of kids are sifted out by the time they get to matric. A lot have dropped off, by the way. But when they're in matric, the quality of the school is very important. You must remember quality of the teaching. If you noticed, all the good schools, well-managed schools with a full complement of teachers, qualified, I'm quite sure if you measure it against schools that did not have proper facilities, where the kids had to walk to school, where there was maybe a lot of deprivation, would have definitely affected them. So it's a very broad question. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is, what opportunities are there for these kids?
Right.
And when they've dropped the pass mark to 30%, now a 30% pass mark, the kid barely opens a book. He's not interested in school. So we're missing a lot of the problems. Why are kids not interested in learning? Why are they not interested in learning? That they're quite happy to just scrape through by 35%. Why? You know, I brought up some step kids, and we really had structure. And what we're able to do is get them to be self-motivated, high self-esteem, knowing what they wanted to do. We never had to nag them. They knew that they needed to go and work. Sorry about this frog in my throat. So we'd be missing the boat is, if kids, why should a parent be on a child's case by the time they get to matric? That kid should be saying, Mom, I need extra lessons. Mom, I need to go for extra help. I'm not understanding this. Let me go and ask a teacher. It shouldn't be a parent's problem by the time they get to matric, because the child's 17, going for 18. So we're missing, but there are different warning signs on the way down there. And we're not nipping that properly. Something is going wrong. So, we should really have a look at it, because what happens to these kids? Especially if they had a lot of them unrealistic, think that they can just walk into varsity getting 30% or 35% for maths, and they want to do something that requires maths. So there's a lot of variables. And I do think society, generally, the way we're bringing up kids, and especially with COVID, far too many kids are being assessed. Far too many kids are sitting in remedial classes. So what is happening, that your remedial classes are getting bigger and your high achievers are getting smaller. They're there, but they're getting, the group is getting smaller. And you've got the shrinking middle group, but nobody seems to be noticing this. And if you don't nip it in grade 1, those kids carry on through school just passing, just being pushed through. I mean, and we've got bright kids that are dropping out, by the way. So we're focusing on the wrong thing. Instead of trying to make the child responsible, we're tending to be centered around the kid, and their little world is not, but many of them is not the real big world out. So it's a world of social media. But a lot of that to me is one of the big key factors, I must say.
Yes. So to my understanding, what I'm just getting it that, the beginning, from the basis, they should just, be extra careful for their children, not just from when they have reached in grade matric, but of course from the beginning, from grade 1, they should be extra careful. Yes, and just things must go smoothly from there, from the very beginning, that whatever the things supposed to be done, taken there at this time, they had to be taken earlier. So another question which is linked to because you have also mentioned that nagging parents, they might be kind of fight with their adult kids. So suppose too much nagging of parents, is it is it helpful? Or that should be limited? What would you say about that?
All right, let me try and help you. First of all, what is a parent's job? They are the authority figure in a child's life. In other words, not authoritarian, but with kids' respect, like a teacher. Now, I always use an example, and I'm going back a bit. When you go on a flight on an airplane, you don't even know the pilot's name, but you trust that you're going to be safe and you land. Now, when kids come into this world, they believe their parents can do the job. Now, the moment the parents start shouting, screaming, the very people the child is depending on to know how to handle situations has lost the plot. A little kid of 4 or 5 got no idea what the parents getting angry about. And you must remember, kids are born impulsive and they're only about themselves. So parents have got to know, how do I parent in a way that's going to help this child become independent, not give up, work on their own, try their best, etc. That is parenting. And if you get it at an early age, so what we need to be doing is guiding a child to adolescence. Because if we get it wrong up to adolescence, they enter adolescence with big problems. It doesn't get better. It gets
Right.
worse. And that
Okay.
is why we're missing the boat, because we're not helping parents. Marriages are taking strain because a kid, it's all about self-esteem, as I said, and that is up to the parent. So
Right.
what we're doing now, the trend is to be there for your child. Be there for your child. Shame their feelings. So all we're doing is allowing a child to opt out, and it becomes our problem.
Right.
So we're not insisting that a kid's got to make an effort. If I can give you an example, there are many kids that are impulsive, even going into adolescence. But
Right.
why? Kids are born impulsive.
Right.
But why are so many impulsive now? They don't have manners. And what difference do manners make? So that if a kids today just go and take mom's cell phone out of her bag, they take things without asking. They just take. Now, all they
Right.
need to do is say, Mom, may I please use your cell phone? Where the mother can say, sorry, I'm busy. Keep the kid waiting.
Right.
So this instant gratification is impulsivity. And that impulsivity is becoming a huge problem. Nobody knows how to deal with it. And all you got to do is teach kids manners. The same with speech therapists are overcrowded. Why? Because the majority of kids whine. They don't talk. Mommy. So all the parents got to say, listen, practice in your room and come and talk and ask me properly, or ask me properly now. You'd avoid many speech problems. But we're not doing that. So the kids have got this attitude, and they're watching tiny screens, and they're all in occupational therapy because, their posture's not good. So it's starting down there, and then they lack their self-discipline. And a child that lacks self-discipline, but how they're going to study when they get to adolescence and discipline themselves.
So what parents can do to get involved into their child's learning and study? What kind of tips or advice would you give?
Well, I know, like, for instance, what I do, it really does work well now. Teenagers, now we're going to talk about teenagers. Teenagers, the majority of them are not communicating well with their parents. They've got attitude, one-word answers. So what I've got a really excellent personality profile. And what I do now, the moment there's an adolescent having a bit of a problem, I will say to the parent, I bring him either for subject choice assessment or a career assessment, and I do this personality profile. And it's very accurate. It's quite unique, but it's brilliant. The moment I give that child feedback, he can't believe that it's like a mirror. They start opening up. And I can then see from the feedback, from they've given me, conflict with their parents that are overbearing, their own lack of motivation, and I'm able to open them up. And that seems to make a huge difference. And when they start opening up, because remember, I say to them, this is what you've given me, I'm interpreting it for you. But I've found the moment they build up a trust that somebody actually now understands how they feel, I have a chat to them, and then I bring their parents in. And then we try and get them working on the same page. And because don't kid yourself, teenagers don't enjoy therapy just being sent for session after session. And if you're not going to include the parents, I mean, what is the point? Because there's a breakdown in the communication at home in virtually all cases. So we're not looking at all of that stuff. And then we're trying to sort the kid out. In the meantime, the parents are going through hell. And remember, parents are only human beings.
Right.
We can only take so much. And then what do we do when we've got to be made out that you've got a kid that, that's come from another planet? We're just not doing the right thing. We're carrying on doing the same things we've been doing for years, and it's not bearing results. And it's creating huge stress in marriages, in relationships with the kids, and we just carry on doing these assessments without looking at fixing up the relationship at home.
Okay, so of course, we're not being born as parents. There was a phase when we were, without children, unmarried, of course, then they got married and got children. So isn't it important for parents also to educate themselves also in order to deal with their teenagers in a better way?
Absolutely. Parenting is a job. That's all it is. And if the majority of parents applied for the job of parenting, they wouldn't get the job. And because it's now you're saying, oh, I'm too soft, well, I can't. But that's fine. But then you can't expect the kid to work out. You've got to understand it's a job. And dads have to come on board as well. Often the dads leave far too much to the mothers. And then the mom, it's just crazy. So we're not doing that. So we've got to understand what our job is. Our job is we've got to equip the child with the skills to take on life. We can't say it's a crime-riddled world. It is. But we've got to equip those kids to deal with it. We can't keep them at home for 18 years and then throw them into that world. They're not going to be able to deal with it. And we're not understanding that's our job. And there is a way to do that. But moms and dads need to come on board, but we have to change our tack. We can't keep on telling parents they're complaining about the kids, punishing the kids, sending them for extra lessons. If the child wants to go for extra lessons, fine. But he's got to go, and he's got to go for another assessment. Eventually, it gets too much for the child. And then, of course, a lot of things break down. And these days of COVID, lots of things are breaking down. And we're not addressing the right problem. That's my concern. We just carry on doing, and it's expensive. It's expensive. All these assessments are very expensive. Therapy is expensive. But that's all, it seems to be the only way that the professionals have been trained. But there's definitely a way. And the younger you catch them, the easier it becomes. And it makes such a difference in the home when you feel you're in charge, where the kids are cooperating, they feel good about themselves, they've got respect, they've got self-discipline, they're well motivated. All of that is up to the parents. They just need to be shown how to do that.
All right. Okay, Dr. Ken.
Just add one more thing. So,
yes, please carry on. First you carry on. Then
so what I was going to say, so the more we do for the kids, the more helpless we make them.
Okay.
Starts off with little things. Dressing a child, picking up a little child that can walk, feeding a child when he should be fed, walking him to the toilet because he's a bit scared when he's 4. Little things like that where the child now gets the parent to do everything. How's that kid now going to deal with life? And when's it going to get better? So it's those little things that are starting young, and all parents are doing it, and they go to parties and there's chaos. All parents sit at parties. Children should be left at parties. Why? Because if they want to go to the toilet, they've got to go and ask Auntie so-and-so where the toilet is on their own. Without saying, Mommy, I want to go to the toilet. Where mom does everything for them. But we're not giving them any clue. And the message the parents are getting, no, you know, it's not you. We'll sort your kid out, which is absolute nonsense. The parents need to be involved with the whole process. And that is the problem. If a parent asks 3 different therapists what they need to do as a parent for their kid, they get 3 different answers.
Right.
And then what do they do? And that becomes a big, big problem. And so we've got to change our thinking. So, because it's a worldwide problem. We're not talking only about South Africa. It's a worldwide problem. You just got to look at the world leaders. I was reading an article. There's not one decent world leader. Right. And it's going to get worse. We're bringing up a generation of entitled kids with attitude, no empathy.
Definitely.
You know, all of that.
They couldn't be good leaders then, you know, eventually. Okay, Dr. Ken. Yes. Dr. Ken, what last message or advice would you like to give to parents as well as to, you know, our adult kids?
Well, obviously, they need help. The parents need help. You know, often parents say to me, I don't need to see the kid. I don't see a little 3-year-old. What am I going to talk to him about? You know, cerebral Ramaphosa. I'm not going to do that. I say, but what I do find when parents have worked with me and done the course, they'll often come and say they can't believe the change in their child. I said, no, you've changed. The child doesn't change. You change. The child automatically changes. So the parents, there is help out there. But often parents feel a bit embarrassed. They don't want to feel they're bad parents. They need to overcome that because a lot of young people are looking twice their age. And the stress of running a big family, it's very, very difficult. Yes, so I'm just suggesting, and unfortunately, there are not many, you know, we need trained professionals as well to understand parents' role. But certainly once change, but the younger the kids are, the easier. By the time they're adolescents, not easy. But it still doesn't mean you can't help it. The child hasn't gone off the rails into drugs or anything like that, and really wants to work, definitely. Then I suggest, as I said, I do that assessment. It's just amazing, and help a lot of teenagers that way. And then once you've helped the teenagers to cooperate, then you're on the road, because most parents want to fix things.
Okay, so Dr. Resnick, that's all for today. It was a pleasure to have you. And in future, definitely we're going to discuss a lot more some educational issues as well. So until, take good care of yourself, and bye-bye from now.
Thank you. Thanks again for inviting.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.